Welcome to another episode of the Build and Scale Boldly podcast. Today's episode is a little bit different and a lot of fun because I'm going to be sharing some of my absolute favorite business books with you. Books that have helped shape the way I think, lead, and build boldly. And I think you'll find them really, really useful if you go out and read them as well. Now, if you're anything like me, you're always reading. I have about 5 books at any one moment started and have a stack of books on my bedside table that are just crazy. Anytime anyone suggests a book, I go into Amazon and I order it right away. And so what happens is I end up with like tons and tons of books I haven't yet read. And so I work through them and then I'm going on a trip and I'll take another one. And that's how I end up with like 5 at once that are started. And I'm looking for new ideas. I'm looking for new mindsets. I'm looking for new skill sets from these books. And so I'm aiming to really learn from other people's journeys. A lot of really incredible entrepreneurs have walked the path before us, and I want to learn everything I can from them and the way that they think through things and the way that they have made it through challenges in order to kind of help turbocharge the speed that I'm able to get through those opportunities. And so that's why I read a lot. That's also why I do masterminds and I'm part of communities with other entrepreneurs, because I'm learning from other people all the time. And that makes such a difference in my business when I go and apply what I learn, which I do all the time. It's not uncommon for me to read a book, come out of it with 5 different ideas that I start applying immediately, or I'm sending pictures to my staff about different pages of a book that I think we should apply. Books have made such a big difference in my life and my growth, and so I highly encourage all of you who maybe aren't reading right now or reading very much right now to set aside, some time every single day to read. And one of the things I do is whenever I go on planes, I actually read, and that allows me to finish a book at a time very, very quickly, because a 4 or 5 hour journey on a plane and you're completely through a book. And so I really that's one of the most efficient times for me to be able to read books is when I'm traveling. And luckily I travel all the time. So the books that I'm going to talk to you about today are not just theory books. They're actually books that, again, have been written by entrepreneurs who have gone out and put these things in practice. They're practical, meaning you can apply them. They're powerful. And I really think they've made a big difference in my journey as an entrepreneur. And I think they can affect yours in a meaningful way too. So this podcast episode is all about leveling up your thinking, your leadership through reading other people's books, and some really classic, incredible books at that. Okay, so number 1 book is Who Not How by Benjamin Hardy. Benjamin Hardy is amazing. I actually really appreciate all of his books. I like X is Easier Than 2X. It's another really good one. And The Gap and the Gain is a really other phenomenal one. The reason I chose Who Not How is because Who Not How really helped me think differently, fundamentally differently, because before reading that book, I was a lot into how can I do this? And I would literally sometimes walk around saying, how can I do this? How can I do this? And what I was missing was the element of who. And I have to say, Gary Keller's book, the one thing is going to be in here as well. Gary Keller's book told me about the who. It did, but I didn't somehow really understand it and implement it. I understood it, but I didn't live it. That's the difference. You can understand something intellectually, but if you're not living it, you didn't actually apply it. Whereas when I read Who Not How by Benjamin Hardy, I actually started to live it in a different way. And so the idea here is, not how do I get this done? It's like, who can help me get this done, or who can help me make this happen? And this is a really great thinking time question. So I love Keith Cunningham books, which you're going to hear about later, but Keith Cunningham has this idea of thinking time and spending 45 minutes or 30 to 45 minutes once or twice a week where you're just thinking. And so this is a great thinking time question, which is, who can help me make this happen? And when you start your brain thinking, you're going to come up with ideas. And even if you don't have the idea right away, the fact you asked it, you're going to be looking for an answer. And so you may figure out an answer 3 months later when you run into somebody and you're like, wait, I was looking for that individual. I'm looking for somebody who knows somebody who does this. That's when you find your who. And so it's really looking for individuals and understanding that individuals and people are ultimately a lot of times what make the big difference in a business. It's not some strategy you picked up that's really transformational. It's a person that you meet that you bring into your business, or it's a person you get advice from, or it's a person who knows somebody who you bring into the business. It's the people that level up your business. It's the people that make the difference. Just to give you an example, when we first started Semi-Retired MD and launched our first course, it was actually people that we knew who made the difference. It was a set of bloggers and entrepreneurs who were also physicians, who had followings, who were willing to be affiliates for our course, that made the difference in allowing us to be able to get out there. So it was truly a who. And that's why I say I knew this concept from Gary Keller. And Gary Keller's book actually allowed me to identify that this was going to be a really important thing, was to find who could help me sell my first course. But again, this book, Benjamin Hardy's, who can help me make this happen, is really transformational if you start living it. It's a total mindset shift away from thinking you have to do everything yourself, which is not true. And in fact, if you think you do everything yourself, you're actually telling yourself a lie, because there are a lot of people helping you. You're just not acknowledging them if you think you're doing everything yourself. Building a real support, scaling, and having the right people around you. That's what this book helps you do. And I think it's really a great book to read, well, no matter where you are in your journey in any business, because if you start thinking this way very early on, it's going to help you grow faster. And if you haven't learned this concept, or you're finding yourself frequently kind of going back into the I got to do it, I'm the best at doing it, I got to do everything myself thinking, you must read this book very, very quickly, because it really helps you shift out of that and to really acknowledge the reality, which is a lot of people are helping you already. But if you can find a couple really key people and be looking for your who's around you all the time, that it's going to get you to where you want to go so much faster than thinking you have to do it all by yourself. Okay, the next book I have to bring up is The One Thing by Gary Keller. So this is Gary Keller of Keller Williams fame. And this book is such a really beautiful book in that it covers so many different topics, and everything is completely applicable. It talks about goal setting. It talks about focus. It talks about, this uniting question, this one question that you ask yourself to really help focus on the 20% that's going to make the 80%. The question is, what by doing it can make everything else easier or unnecessary? And when you ask yourself this question, it helps you focus on the most important thing. And one of the cool things about that book is when I first read it, which is actually before Semi-Retired MD even became Semi-Retired MD, is it helped me think through my real estate portfolio and say, okay, what's the most important thing? What's the one thing I could do right now that's going to make the biggest difference? That when I do it, everything's going to be easier or unnecessary to do. And it just, in a sea of where you have 50 billion things going on, which all of us have going on, and all of us have to-do lists that are longer than we will ever get through. Okay, what is the most important thing to focus on at this point? And it's kind of like it's a sanity question. It's a sanity question that when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like there's a million to do, you're not sure where to start. It's a sanity question that allows you to focus. The other thing he really has in there is he talks about interdependence. He talks about balance and how balance doesn't exist. It's imbalance, and sometimes some things are more important and some things are less important. He talks about glass balls versus rubber balls. So there are certain things that you can drop for a period of time. It's a rubber ball. It's going to be okay. There are certain things like glass balls that are like your health and your family relationships you can never drop, and you can never say, hey, I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to focus on something else, because when you drop those balls, they're balls that actually break, right? They're glass. And so I love that book. The One Thing. I read it very early on in my real estate journey and have always recommended it, and it's made such a difference in my life as well. The next book is The Ultimate Blueprint for an Insanely Successful Business by Keith Cunningham. And you will hear me mention Keith Cunningham all the time in this podcast because he is an amazing entrepreneur, and I spent 3 years learning from him in addition to attending conferences every year where he speaks. So every year I get exposed to him and hear the same stuff from him and apply a little bit more of it. But then I also had intensive training in a mastermind with him for 3 whole years. And so he highly influenced how I CEO. So I call it female CEOing. And so he's highly influenced how I CEO. So this Ultimate Blueprint for an Insanely Successful Business, there are a couple books that he's written. Road Less Stupid is another one that's really good for thinking time questions. But what I like about the Ultimate Blueprint for an Insanely Successful Business is it helps you understand optics, and it helps you understand metrics and why they're so important, and why you need dashboards, and why you need to look at your finances. And it really talks about all the nitty-gritty that you need to do to run your business like a business and not just run it blindly. And so I love his book. I recommend it to anyone who is starting out because a lot of people, we think the finances are less important or we aren't following the metrics. We're just trying to make it by, we're just creating our offer and we're putting all of our energy into there. But if we're not looking at the metrics and we don't have optics we can actually use and we're not looking at the finances, we are truly running blind, and that's where disasters happen. That's where people run into the wall. They think they have plenty of money and they have zero cash flow. They run into the wall. And so Keith's book is so good for an entrepreneur even if you're just starting out, but especially if you have a business that's creating revenues, especially if you have employees. Like you must read this book to really understand how to run your business like a machine and actually be an owner, not an operator. This is the book that will help you do that. So I love Keith's book, and I love his ways that he uses numbers to make decisions, so you're not just running on gut feelings. And I just think that Keith's book is an imperative book for you to read if you're CEOing. Okay, the next book is The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann. And I have to admit, I haven't read this book 10 years ago. I read this book just probably about 2 years ago, but it profoundly influenced my thinking. It was kind of like I was reading it and I was like, oh, absolutely, I already knew these things, but to see them in print and to see them all put together in such an eloquent way was really great. And I actually wrote them all down and put them up behind my desk so I look at them every day. And that's how important I think these values are. And there are things about statements really, and he calls them laws, but they're statements about what is value, what are you compensated for? And just like there really are natural laws of how business works, and it's about service and it's about giving of yourself, because business truly is a spiritual game. It really has you grow, and the more that you live in contribution, the more that you live in love of your clients and your customers and your community, the more that you live in those types of ways with service leading everything that you do, the more successful your business will be. And I love how this book, The Go-Giver, is really written in a fable-like way. So it's so easy to read. You can literally read it in a couple hours, and it's profound in its simplicity. And when you read it, you'll be like, that is absolutely true. Like each law, when you read them, you're like, of course. But even though it's so obvious, like most of us don't live them every single day. And so it's a really great reminder. I just love the book. I love how it focuses on service, on value, on generosity, and it just shifts your mind. It makes you remember the core tenets of how to lead a successful business. Of course, how to lead a successful life, to be honest. You can use this in every part of your life. It reminds us that business isn't just about transactions. It's about relationships, it's about trust, it's about transformation, and it's about service you provide to others. The next book is Good to Great by Jim Collins, a real classic, and for a really good reason. I actually am currently reading Jim Collins's book, B, Business Entrepreneurship 2.0. So I'll let you know how that is, but I'm currently reading that as well. But Good to Great is a real classic. I think some of the things that people really get out of it's a study of a lot of successful CEOs and a lot of successful businesses, and it kind of pulls out common threads that different successful CEOs and businesses use, so you can start to see the patterns. It's really a book about patterns of what creates great businesses. And it talks about level 5 leadership. It talks about frameworks like how do you do a flywheel? How do you get momentum over time? Like there's a lot of different things about like leadership and skills and actionable insights that you can take and you start applying right away. We actually read it as a book club in our company. So I used to do book clubs. Everybody would read a book and we would have a couple hours would come together as a team and really discuss the books. Right now, my leadership team actually has books that different like groups in my company will read. So like the operations team will read a book, for example, the marketing team will read a book. So that's kind of how we're doing it right now. But Good to Great was a book that we all read together. And I think it was really, really great to have the insights of everyone in the team and have everyone have a common language of understanding this book. And because actually, and I have to say some of it is marketing is so important to your company that every single person should understand marketing strategy and understand what works. And that's really helpful in here as well. The next one is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. I am a huge Patrick Lencioni fan. I love Patrick Lencioni. I could talk about all of his books, Ideal Team Player, like all of them are so good. But Five Dysfunctions of the Team is another one that we read actually on the semi-retired team. And what it really talks about is what kind of dysfunctions destroy teamwork. And he also writes all of his books as fables, which I love. And so you can kind of follow along and you get engaged in the story. Sometimes there's some corny pieces, but largely it's well done. And you can see these truths that kind of underlie every successful team. It's really about culture, right? It's about trust, it's about conflict, it's about accountability, it's about, results, and it's about ownership is what I really think. And I love that because that's actually one of my core values is ownership in our business. And so in one of our businesses. And so I think that it will allow you, as you have a team, to see a lot of the issues you might be running against. It'll allow you to have insights about where maybe things aren't working. And so I think it's just a really incredible book for a whole team to read, but you definitely to read once you have a team. You don't need to read this if you're a solopreneur, but once you have a couple members of your team, absolutely read this and look for any of those patterns that you're falling into that maybe are not helping the team, and then you can see ways that they actually, in the fable, that they work out of those patterns, and you can see how you can do those as well, where you can work out of them. Start with Why by Simon Sinek is another one. I think this book is so helpful for you to really think about your driving why, especially if you're a purpose-driven entrepreneur. You probably already have a very, very strong why, but he talks about why the why is so important and why you really need to have a why in your business, and a why that's communicated to every member of your team. Because I think a lot of times when we start out a business, we have a very strong why, but we don't necessarily communicate it with our team as frequently as we need to. And so one of the things that I do is actually every quarter I do a quarterly State of the Union with my whole entire team. And during that time, I'm not only talking, where we are right now, like how are our finances doing, what have we had as wins, what are current challenges, where have we fallen short this quarter, but I'm also talking about our why. I'm talking about what we do, why we do it. I'm talking about our cultural values, what makes us unique, what brings this whole team together. So I reiterate these pieces over and over and over again with my team. This is part of entrepreneurial operating system. They encourage you to do these quarterly State of the Unions where you reiterate your culture and your why to your team. And so I make sure that I do that every single time. So Simon Sinek, Start with Why, is a really amazing book. And then lastly, I wanted to throw in a little bonus, which is, it's not a business book per se, but it is a book on hiring, which I think is really, really phenomenal. And that's the book on hiring by Jeff Smart. And there's a couple other authors. And that book is all about a hiring system and an interview system that I've used and I've modified over the years. And I think it's just really, again, when I first started out as a CEO, one of the biggest fears I had, one of the biggest limiting beliefs I had was that I didn't know how to hire and I didn't know how to build a team. And I even had limiting beliefs about what I was capable of building in the business because I didn't have formal CEO training, right? I was just a physician. I had all kinds of stories in my head. And so when you read that book, it gives you a lot of confidence because it gives you the hiring system that you can then use as a framework, and then you can start modifying it to fit what you want to do as you learn things over the time. So I think the Who book is really amazing and must read for anybody who is starting out and hiring their first or second or third team member. You want to read it very, very early because you want to have a system, and you take that system, it's going to save you years of pain of like hiring the wrong people, of not knowing what you're doing, or trying to find somebody to hire for you because you just are so fearful or just haven't developed that skill set. So the Who book is a must read for anyone hiring a team. Okay, now I could keep going forever because I love reading. There's so many books, other books that I would love to talk to you about. But in the interest of time, let's end it there. And then I will make a free resource available to you guys, my favorite books list. And this will have both business books, but then also some spirituality books, some mindset books, because I think that really as a business leader, the business develops all of you. It doesn't just develop your business skills. You gotta develop your relationship skills. You gotta develop your mindset. It's a huge piece of it. And so you want to read all these different types of books to develop yourself as a leader, right? And not just be only business strategy books. And so my favorite books list will have has all of those things. And then also we're going to put that, I'll put the link below so you guys can download that. That'll be free. And then it'll help you start building your CEO library, give you some ideas of where you can start out reading business books or other kind of personal development books. So we always end with a question in these solo episodes for you to kind of walk away and consider. You can always reach out and write to us at hello@biara.com too, and share your insights if any insights come up for you. But here's the question: what's the one book that completely changed the way you think about business? And again, you can share that anywhere. Actually, you can leave a review for the podcast, throw it in there, or you can write to us, or you can share it in any of our social media as well. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to subscribe to the Build and Scale Boldly podcast so you never miss an episode. You don't want to miss an episode of this, right? And if you found a book or an idea that inspired you, share this episode with a friend, another female entrepreneur, somebody CEOing out there and who's building their business boldly, right? And wanting to have more impact, wanting to scale, and wanting to do so with more ease as well. The more bold women we lift up, the more we change the game, the more we change the world together. So keep dreaming big, keep leading boldly, and most of all, keep building the business and life that you love. That's what we're here for. See you next time.